I know the exact moment I stopped justifying myself to people who never deserved the explanation in the first place. It wasn't a blowout. There was no screaming across a kitchen table, no late-night phone call that finally went too far. It started with a group text I sent on a Wednesday afternoon in April, the kind of message you type with one hand while your 5-year-old climbs the back of the couch asking if dinosaurs had feelings. My son had been chosen for a solo. That probably sounds small if you don't know him. If you don't know how long it took him to stop hiding behind my leg when strangers said hello. If you don't know how many Tuesday evenings I drove him 40 minutes to the community center and sat in a plastic chair outside the rehearsal room, listening through the walls to a room full of kids finding their voices, hoping he was finding his. He'd been in the little choir for almost a year. He practiced in the car, he practiced in the bathtub, he sang under his breath at the grocery store and looked horrified if he thought anyone heard him. A solo in the spring showcase wasn't just a performance, it was months of him deciding he was brave enough to be seen. So I sent the text. 3 weeks before the date, I wrote, Teddy has a solo in the spring showcase at the Riverside Community Center, Friday, May 9th at 7 p.m. He's been working so hard and he keeps asking who's coming. It would mean the world to him to have family there. My mother replied 11 minutes later, we'll see, that's a school night. May 9th is a Friday. My brother replied 4 hours after that, is it mandatory? What's parking like down there? I told him there was a free garage across the street after 6 o'clock. He left the message unread. I told myself it was fine, that they were busy, just processing the date, just needing time to check their calendars. I had spent years learning how to talk myself out of noticing the things that should have hurt. It was a skill I'd built slowly, the way you build calluses, one small disappointment at a time, until you stop feeling the friction. I sent a reminder the following week, just one. Heads up, Teddy's showcase is this Friday at 7. He keeps asking if Grandma and his uncle are going to be there. I drafted it 4 different ways before landing on something that didn't sound desperate. My mother replied, I might have something that evening. Don't hold a seat for me. My brother didn't respond at all. I put my phone face down on the counter and stood there for a minute staring at the wall. Then I went into the living room where my son was sitting on the floor with his choir folder open, running his finger under the words to his solo like he was reading a map. He looked up. Do you think I'll mess up? He asked. No, I told him, you're going to be great. And that was the end of it for me. Whatever I'd been hoping for from my mother and my brother quietly packed up and walked out the door. I stopped hoping and started planning. My boyfriend helped me steam Teddy's little vest the night before. He'd bought a bouquet of flowers, small sunflowers, the yellow kind that looked cheerful without trying too hard. They're from both of us, he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. He'd been in our lives for 2 years by then, and that was exactly what I loved most about him, the way he showed up without making it a production. He didn't perform presence, he just had it. My neighbor from 2 doors down offered to save us seats. My coworker, a fellow nurse I'd worked alongside for 3 years, brought her 2 kids and a homemade banner that said Go Teddy in green marker because she'd asked him once what his favorite color was and actually remembered. May 9th came warm and clear, the kind of spring evening that feels like a reward for surviving winter. We parked in the garage across the street. Teddy was wearing his vest and his good shoes. He kept pulling at his collar. Inside the auditorium, I watched him scan the rows. I knew what he was looking for. His eyes moved over the seats carefully, searching. He turned to me and asked if Grandma was coming. I said she was probably just parking. I still don't forgive myself for that one. I should have told him the truth in a way a 5-year-old could hold. Something gentle and honest, not a lie dressed up as reassurance. But I couldn't do it right then, not 3 minutes before he walked on stage. When the lights shifted and the choir filed out, I found him immediately. Third from the left, hands clasped in front of him the way the teacher had shown them. Then the intro started. Then it was his moment, and his voice came out. Small first, then sure, then something I couldn't describe even now without getting a lump in my throat. He finished, looked out at the audience, and the smile that crossed his face was so unguarded it almost broke me in half. The people around us clapped. My coworker's kids shouted his name. My boyfriend put 2 fingers in his mouth and whistled. My neighbor took a video on her phone. After, we stood in the lobby while Teddy clutched his sunflowers and talked too fast about which part he'd been nervous about and how the lights were really bright up there and could we please get ice cream. We got ice cream. That night, after he was asleep, I posted 3 photos. Teddy under the stage lights, Teddy holding the sunflowers mid-law, the whole group of us outside on the sidewalk after my boyfriend, my coworker, and her kids, my neighbor, and Teddy right in the center with his vest half unbuttoned and the most alive expression I'd ever seen on his face. The caption was simple. He sang like nobody was listening. Then he looked up and found everyone was so proud of this kid. I didn't tag my mother, I didn't tag my brother, I didn't address them at all. I just posted it for the people who had been there, and I turned off my phone and went to bed. 2 days later, I got a text from a cousin I only hear from when someone's upset about something. She said, "Hey, just so you know, your mom told Aunt I won't name her. She's not worth naming that she didn't find out about Teddy's thing until the day of. She said she would have been there if she'd known sooner." I read it twice. Then I went to my messages and pulled up the group chat. I scrolled to April 17th. There it was, my text, sent at 2:48 in the afternoon, 3 weeks before the showcase, and below it my mother's response, "We'll see, that's a school night." And below that, my brother's, "Is it mandatory? What's parking like?" I took a screenshot, both timestamps visible. I scrolled down to my reminder, sent on May 2nd, my mother's response, "I might have something that evening. Don't hold a seat for me." My brother's silence. I took a screenshot of that too. My brother texted me later that day. "You could have given us more warning. It's not fair to drop something like that last minute." And that was the part that made my hands go absolutely still, because my brother hadn't responded to the reminder at all. He knew perfectly well when it was. He just hadn't come, and now he needed a story for why, and the story required me to be careless and thoughtless, and the kind of person who ambushes her family with last-minute obligations. I didn't reply. My mother called twice. I let both calls go to voicemail. She left one message, long, soft, sad-sounding, saying she'd heard Teddy was wonderful and she was so sorry she'd missed it and she just hadn't known until it was too late. She hoped I understood. She sounded so sincere, she always does. The texts kept coming from extended family. Cousins I hadn't seen since someone's wedding 3 years ago. An uncle with an opinion. A second cousin who wanted me to know that family is everything. Each one with some version of the same message. My mother was heartbroken. She hadn't known. She would have been there. All of them already sure of a story that had nothing to do with what actually happened. I sat with it for a full day. The old version of me would have typed individual responses to each person, explaining, clarifying, apologizing for the confusion, even though I hadn't created any confusion. I would have smoothed it over until it didn't look like what it was. Instead, I opened the group chat. I sent 2 images. The first screenshot, April 17th, my text and my mother's reply, timestamp visible. The second screenshot, May 2nd, my reminder and my mother's response, timestamp visible. Underneath, I typed 8 words. I wanted everyone to have the same information. Then I put my phone down and went to fold laundry. The chat went quiet in a way that felt different from regular quiet. My mother called 3 more times. I didn't answer. My brother texted, "That was humiliating. You didn't have to do that in front of everyone." I replied with 2 letters, "Okay." He didn't text again. That weekend, I opened my banking app. I had a habit of doing this Sunday mornings, coffee in hand, going through the week, but this time I was looking for specific things. I found them. My brother had been on my car insurance policy for 2 years, $87 a month, added after he let his own policy lapse and needed a quick fix. It had become permanent without anyone deciding it should be. I had just kept paying. My mother had a grocery delivery subscription. She'd mentioned once that it was expensive and she wasn't sure she could keep it. I'd quietly added my card without making it a thing because making it a thing would have meant a conversation, and the conversation would have cost more than the $29 a month, so I'd just paid it. And then there were the transfers, the occasional $200 or $300 when my mother texted that she was a little short this month, which happened 4 or 5 times a year. I kept a rough count in my head without letting myself add it up all the way, because the number would have required a feeling I wasn't ready to have. I removed my brother from my insurance policy. I canceled the grocery subscription. I made a note not to send the next transfer. No announcement, no explanation, no dramatic speech. I just stopped. The call came 9 days later. My brother, which was notable because my brother almost never calls, only texts, and only when he needs something or wants to establish a position. He said the family wanted to do something for Teddy, make it up to him. They'd booked a table at a pizza place with an arcade on the east side of town this Saturday, 2 o'clock. Just bring him. It'll be fun. He deserves a celebration, my brother said, and I noticed he said it the way people say things they've been coached to say, carefully, with emphasis in the right places. I said I'd think about it. I called my boyfriend after. I told him every word. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "They're not doing it for Teddy. They're doing it because they need a photo." One photo, and suddenly the story becomes, "We celebrated him. We were there. Everything's fine." He said it without anger, just like he was reading a weather report. Don't let them use his happiness to fix their image. I sat with that until it settled. Saturday morning, I woke my son up early. He blinked at me from his pillow, suspicious and hopeful in the way kids are when something is off schedule. I told him we were going on an adventure. His face did the thing. I live for that face. I'd looked up an indoor climbing gym 40 minutes away, one he'd pointed at on a drive months ago, pressing his face to the car window, asking if kids could go. It had a section built for little ones, foam pits, walls with bright colored holds, a staff that was clearly used to children who were terrified and delighted in equal measure. We walked in and he stopped in the doorway and looked at me like I'd invented something. For 3 hours he climbed. He fell into the foam pit and asked to climb back up so he could fall again. He scaled a wall he told me was too hard 4 times before he made it to the top, and when he did, he threw both arms in the air and shouted something wordless and triumphant, and 2 strangers nearby clapped for him without thinking. My phone buzzed while I was watching him. "My brother, we're at the restaurant, where are you?" Then 5 minutes later, "Really? You're doing this?" Then Mom is upset. This wasn't fair. I watched my son land in the foam pit for the 7th time. I put my phone back in my pocket. That night, after he was bathed and fed and barely keeping his eyes open, I posted one photo. Him at the top of that climbing wall, arms raised, the grin. Underneath I wrote, "He figured out the hard part is just not stopping." I didn't say another word. My aunt called 3 days later, not the one who gossips, but my mother's older sister, a quiet woman who lives alone in the suburbs and tends a vegetable garden, and has, as long as I can remember, preferred honesty to performance. She had been at the pizza place that Saturday. She said it was the most uncomfortable 2 hours she'd spent in years. My mother cried most of the meal. My brother kept saying I always had to be right. People picked at their food and talked in circles, and nobody named what was actually happening, which was that they had come prepared to be forgiven without having to ask for it. When the people they'd come to forgive didn't show up, there was nothing left to do but sit there and feel what they'd been trying to reroute onto me. My aunt paused, then she said, "I saw the texts you sent, both of them. I've known your mother for 62 years. I know exactly what she does and why she does it. And I want you to know what you did, sending those screenshots. That wasn't cruel. That was accurate." I didn't say anything for a moment. Nobody had ever said that to me. Not about my family, not about any of it. She kept going. "You've been the one holding that family together since before you were old enough to be asked to. You've been paying for things and covering for people and staying quiet about it for a long time. And you don't owe anyone your son's milestones. Not a single one." I thanked her. She told me to call her sometime just to talk, not because something was wrong. I said I would. My mother sent a long message a week later. It was the longest thing she'd written me in years, maybe ever. She talked about missing me, about missing Teddy, about stress and health, and wanting things to go back to the way they used to be. She said she'd made mistakes, and she owned that. She said she loved me. But she never said she lied. She never said the words I told people you didn't invite us and acknowledged what that meant. She never addressed the screenshots. She never said, "I knew the date and I chose not to come, and when it reflected badly on me, I rewrote the story." She said everything around it without touching the center. She ended with, "I just want my family back." I read it in the morning before Teddy woke up. I read it again. I thought about the version of me that would have read those words and driven to her house that afternoon. That would have sat across from her and said, it's okay, I know you didn't mean it, let's just move forward." That would have called my brother and smoothed it over and gone back to paying the car insurance and the grocery subscription and the quiet $200 transfers and filed this whole episode under families are complicated and kept going. That version of me had spent years believing that keeping the peace was the same thing as love. It took me a long time to understand that it wasn't. It was just peacekeeping, a full-time job I'd been doing on behalf of people who never noticed the labor. I typed my response slowly. I didn't want it to be cruel. I didn't want it to be a list of grievances. I just wanted it to be true. "I love you too, but I can't keep fitting myself into the shape of a relationship that only works when I pretend things didn't happen." I sent it. I set my phone on the counter. I went to make breakfast. The noise after that, the extended family, the forwarded opinions, the second-hand accounts of my mother's distress faded over the next few weeks the way static fades when you drive out of a bad signal zone. It didn't stop all at once. It just got quieter, and then one day I noticed it was gone. It was almost a month later when my father reached out. He and I have always had the kind of relationship that exists in short bursts. A birthday text, an occasional call, a Christmas card that shows up 2 weeks late. He remarried years ago and lives 4 states away and has always kept a careful distance from my mother's side of things, which I understood even when it hurt. He sent a message one morning that said a family member had mentioned Teddy's showcase. He said he'd heard Teddy sing a solo and that he'd love to see a video if I had one. I sat with it, not suspiciously, just quietly, letting it be what it was. I sent the video, just that, no note. He replied 20 minutes later, "He's remarkable, he gets that from you." It was a small thing, an imperfect thing, but it landed differently than anything my mother or my brother had said in months, because it wasn't an image management project, it wasn't a performance or a negotiation or an attempt to rewrite a story. It was just a grandfather watching his grandson sing and feeling something real about it. I won't tell you it fixed anything. I won't say it closed some wound I'd been carrying, but it felt honest, and honest, I was learning, was rarer than I'd understood. Teddy starts the fall session at the community center next month. He's decided he wants to try the dance class in addition to choir, which he announced at dinner one night with the same energy someone might announce a major corporate merger. My boyfriend looked at me over his head and pressed his lips together to keep from laughing. He doesn't ask about my mother anymore. He doesn't ask why his uncle never comes around. He has stopped wondering about the people who aren't here in the way children stop wondering when they're surrounded by enough warmth. Not because they've given up, but because they've found what they were really looking for. He asks about the climbing gym. He asks if we can go back. The circle around us is small. My coworker who makes banners in green marker. My neighbor who saves seats and brings tomatoes from her garden in August. My boyfriend who fixes things without being asked and remembers small details and holds space without making it a presentation. My aunt who calls now sometimes just to talk. That's most of it. That's almost everything. I think sometimes about the version of me from a year ago, the one who would have apologized for sending those screenshots, who would have loaded my son into the car and driven him to that pizza party so nobody had to feel uncomfortable, who would have read my mother's long message and cried with relief that she was reaching out, and called it healing even though nothing had been examined, nothing acknowledged, nothing actually repaired. That version kept the lights on in a house where nobody was honest with each other and called it family. I don't miss her. I just hope my son never has to become her. He's signing up for the fall showcase already. His teacher says he's been singing louder lately, less in the back, more toward the front. I'm going to be there, my boyfriend is going to be there, my neighbor and my coworker, and probably at least one homemade banner. We'll fill our little section of chairs, and we will be so loud when his part comes that he'll hear us from the stage. And he won't wonder who isn't there, he'll only know who is.